Hello, I'm Wendy Apple with Wending Path, and today I'm here to talk to you a little bit about Neurographica and draw with you the Shamanic Rain algorithm. So first, let me tell you a little bit about Neurographica if you're brand new to it. Neurographica is a tool using building our neurons inside of our body, building connections with our neurons inside of our nervous system, and doing that through deliberate um, steps through a graphic drawing process. You don't need to be an artist to do it. You don't need to have any drawing skills at all, or you can be an artist. It's not significant for what we're doing. It doesn't make a difference. We are changing what is happening inside ourselves, much less so than what we're doing on the paper. The paper is the tool for making the changes inside of ourselves. So today's focus is going to be on the Shamanic Rain algorithm. Shamans are people who are healers, who have a strong connection to both the energy of the earth and the energy of the sky. So they help traditionally heal people, and they do that by channeling the energy of the earth and the energy of the sky. So today in our drawing, we're going to be taking that model of using earth energy and sky energy and using it to help grow things within us that we would like to grow, or things outside of us that we would like to grow. So typical topics for this particular drawing, it's sometimes called money rain, so people will use it to grow their own personal prosperity. You can use it to develop a business or your particular skills that you need for work or in your personal life. You could use it to build, say, self-confidence, or you could use it to build something very specific like comfort with public speaking. So there are a variety of things you can use it to grow and to focus on. Essentially, the idea being that we are getting our egos out of the way and reconnecting to these energies that are much greater than us within our universe, and letting them flow through us and help us develop in ways that we are able to, in ways that we are meant to, in ways that we choose to. So what I want to start with today is I'm going to draw on my grandchildren. I decided I'm going to draw on their health and prosperity and happiness. I have 3 grandchildren, and I'm going to recommend that you pick a topic for something you want to develop. And again, it could be something like something inside of you, a trait within yourself, your health, your confidence, whatever. Or it could be something entirely outside of yourself. It could be something about peace in the world. It could be health directed at others in your life who maybe are struggling with health issues. All of those things are great topics for this particular drawing. So I'm going to start this drawing the way we frequently start drawings, and that's with our exercise of words in 2 minutes. That is a stream of consciousness exercise where I'll set a timer for 2 minutes, and you will focus on your topic, and you will write down the words that come into your brain, just in order as they come. No need to edit the words or change the words, but we're trying to get your brain, or to get our neurons firing and get them activated in the direction that we want to go with the topic. So I would start by focusing just a bit on the topic that you've selected, and going with that, and then we'll just see where you get with the words. So first thing, I'm going to set my timer here for 2 minutes. I'm going to start that, and I will be writing on my paper, and you can write on yours. I just write on the back of the sheet I'm going to draw on, is how I do mine. So I'm starting the timer now. This is an interesting exercise, coming up with these words about people that I care about so clearly, but am somewhat removed from. It made me think as I was going, I began to think about the idea of how much of these traits that I was wishing for them that we don't take time and energy to wish for ourselves. So that's a separate issue to talk about and think about. So with these words, the purpose of the words is just to get your neurons firing in the direction that we'd like them to help facilitate the drawing process. But some people like to count the words. It's a good idea to come up with at least 20. If you come up with less than 20, you can go ahead and add words, or at least recognize that you have some resistance to the topic. That isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's just a good thing to be aware of. So I tended to focus in my particular list on very positive things. If you are writing about yourself or some other topic, you may find that some of your words are negative. Again, not good or bad, but useful to be aware of how much positivity or negativity you have directed at the topic that you're working on. So that's what we do with that particular exercise. Now I'm going to suggest that you read through your words and pick, because I want to limit the size and scope of this particular drawing so that we can get through it start to finish, and then I'm going to show you how to add topics and add onto your drawing later near the end of our drawing. But for now, I'm going to recommend that you look through this list and find 3 things that you would like to plant in the ground, plant as seeds, as things that you want to grow. So looking at your words as a jumping off point, you don't have to pick 3 of these words, but it's fine to pick 3 of these. If there's something else you think of, that's okay too, but pick 3 of them. Boy, it's hard to pick just 3. Okay, all right, I picked 3. I picked health, joy, and satisfaction. Okay, I am going to switch my camera so you can see my drawing, which will make it easier for you as we go forward. Okay, and on the back of my paper, I usually write the date, just for my own ability to look back and see what I was doing, and the algorithm. And again, I'll try to write this big so you can see it. This particular algorithm is called Shamanic Rain. And I write my topic. So the back of my paper is where I take my notes, different things I think of as I'm going through. We'll talk about color and some of those different issues as we're going forward. Okay, so now we're going to turn our papers over, and I said I wanted to have you do a smaller drawing today so that we can get through it in the recorded session. So what I'm going to ask you to do, or what I'm going to demonstrate doing, you can choose to do it or not, is I'm going to fold my paper in half, joining the short sides, and I am going to do my drawing today on this side. So if it were to open, if my drawing were to open backwards, as it were, like this, my book is opening on the left side. I'm going to draw here on the left side. And the reason I'm doing that, so you can picture it, is my goal. Here, I can show you this drawing. So I did the same thing on this drawing, and so I draw on it, and then when I'm ready to add additional traits to my drawing, should I choose to do that, I just open the paper and I can continue my drawing this way and eventually take the paper on and keep growing this drawing if I want to do that. And I'll show you a little bit more about that as we go forward. So I'm going to draw, for me this time, on what I'm considering the left side of this page. Or would be the back if it was a book. Okay, and I'm going to start with my medium size marker, medium nib point, And I'm going to think about my, here, let me show you one other drawing that will help you visualize this. So this one is, oops, this one. This one is, get it in the camera, this one is finished. So the drawing itself is going to be divided into thirds roughly, bottom third, top third, middle third. So the bottom third is where we're going to plant our seeds and grow them. The top is where the clouds, rain and sun are located, and where the resources for our goals are located. And then we'll do some stuff bringing the energy down and the energy up to support our growth. So that's kind of visually what we're doing, although we're just going to do it on half like that. So here's our half sheet. I'm going to be thinking about the bottom quarter to third of my paper. And the first thing I'm going to do is draw a horizon line roughly a third of the way on the page. And this horizon line, as you can see, is an organic neurographic line. It's not a straight line. And it just represents, as I said, the horizon going across. And we will then add several more lines going across the page, and they don't have to touch the far left. They could, I guess I should do an example, they could go off the page at the bottom, and they can touch at the top, and they can even go across the horizon line, which basically just changes the horizon, brings it up a little bit. So you'll just do a few of those lines, whatever feels right to you. So I'm gonna do, yeah, I think that's probably good. All right, so that's the first stage with my neurographic lines. The next thing that I'm going to do is round what I've already put on there. And I'm gonna grab my pen here. I like to use a slightly finer tip for rounding. It's a little bit easier, but sticking to the same color. So since I'm drawing in black, I'm gonna round in black with this smaller marker. I prefer to use Pitt pens and micron pens because they're odorless, but Sharpies work fine. They have fine tips and broader tips, and they work fine for this drawing as well. So rounding, if you've seen my other videos or done other neurographic drawings, you've seen how to do rounding. Rounding is where we take these intersections and we turn these what are considered areas of conflict or tension, and we round them out like this, making everything smoother and taking away any tension or conflict. And so I like to do, with most of my drawings, I like to round as I go, which helps me if the drawing brings up any negative sensations or any agitation. It doesn't get away from me or get too far ahead before I've had a chance to calm things down. The rounding process at the beginning, when you're new to Neurographica, can be a bit tedious, but hopefully pretty quickly you find it to be soothing or reassuring, because it is quite literally teaching your body how easy it is to shift directions, to make other choices. So these lines represent our thoughts, represent the patterns that we've established in our life. And by intersecting the lines and giving ourselves alternate directions, we're giving ourselves alternate choices. So it's always easier at the beginning to draw less lines, but as we develop and can draw more lines, our drawings become more and more effective the more lines that we draw. All right, Now, if you haven't quite finished your rounding, and that's fine, I'm pretty fast, I've been doing this a while, I would suggest that you pause the video now and finish your rounding before you move forward. I will go ahead at this point and I am going to draw in 3 seeds. And those are going to be 3 circles in my ground, in my terrain down here. And I'll try to find some arcs that have already started. So for example, here's an arc, and our brain interestingly views that arc as a completed circle. So in our brain we're already finishing that circle, so that would certainly work. Here's another one. This one's really jumping out at me, so I'm going to go ahead and finish this circle. So there's one of my seeds. The seeds can overlap. The seeds can be bigger and smaller, vary in size. Any of those things is fine. I'm going to deliberately space my seeds out a little bit. This particular drawing, Shamanic Rain, often gets to be a bit chaotic, and so I'm going to leave some space between my seeds for the demonstration of this drawing, just to keep it slightly less chaotic and easier for you to see. If you end up putting a lot of seeds down here, that's just fine. That's your drawing and that's your process. I'm going to make my third one right over here. Okay, so again, you can do more seeds. This first time I'm deliberately trying to make this pretty simple. So I've made these 3 seeds and I'm spreading them out. And I am also going to round the intersections created by these 3 seeds right here. Everywhere where there's sharpness, I'm creating a nice smooth transition. Every single place. Let's see, that one looks good. Sometimes we get, on our neurographic drawings, sometimes we get lines that are very, very close together, or little bitty bubbles that get formed by our lines. It is okay in either case to fill it in, to make 2 skinny lines next to each other thicker, or to fill in a small circle rather than trying to round it, to just fill it in all with ink. That's okay too. Should have said at the beginning, but I would say now that if you haven't done the very first video going through what you need to know with rounding and organic lines, I would suggest that you do that video. That'll get you more comfortable with this process before we move into this drawing here. All right, so those are my 3 seeds. And again, if you haven't gotten your seeds in place and if you haven't gotten them rounded yet, I'm going to suggest that you pause the video and get that done before we move on. You can label your seeds as particular traits that you want to grow, or not, whatever you're more comfortable with. Your brain will keep track of that information, whether you consciously remember it, your subconscious will. But I like to write in there what they are, so I'm just going to check my list. Health, joy, and satisfaction, and I'm going to write that in each of my circles. Okay. All right. So that just helps me keep track of that. The next thing we're going to do is work on the sky. So our sky will look very much like our ground. We're going to focus on the top third or so of the paper, and we're going to draw clouds, but we're going to draw them the same way we drew our horizon line. So I'm going to pick the lowest cloud line, and I'm just going to draw a very uneven, natural, organic neuro line across my sky, representing the bottom edge of my clouds. And I'm going to, just like I did down here, I'm going to repeat that process to create the edges of my clouds, creating some lines that go across the page or go off the top, connect to the bottom, and that intersect one another to create some circles and natural organic movement and interaction here. I'm going to do just one more here. Okay, and then just like we did on the bottom, the next thing we do is round. So I'm going to round the intersections that I created, because these intersections represent sharp corners, which represents conflict or tension or trouble in some fashion. And we want to create harmony and make the traveling along these lines and switching course on the lines as easy as possible, as easy and straightforward as possible. Often we miss intersections, we miss rounding certain ones as we're going. We just don't see them, and that's okay. It's okay to round at any point during the drawing process. Later on, as you're coloring, you may well find things that you missed when you were rounding. And you can feel free to round those when you find them. Boy, I didn't have very many intersections at the top there. All right, well, I think as best as I can see here, I've gotten everything rounded that I drew. And again, you may have more lines than I do, more intersections than I do. If you don't have any intersections, I suggest you add a couple more lines that go through some of the other ones. We don't want all of our life to be run on parallel tracks. We want the opportunity to change direction and change course as we're moving forward, and that's what these intersections allow us to do. So now I am going to focus on the resources that help feed and make possible the seeds and the growth that I've planted down here. And I'm going to do that in the same way that I did these seeds. I'm going to look for curves that I created through the drawing process and just finish those circles out. So here's one right here, and here's one, here's a little one. Now with the resources, typically you're going to have more resources than seeds. There are more avenues, more possible ways to accomplish what we hope to accomplish, and also support in the universe for helping us accomplish what we're trying to accomplish. So unlike with the seeds where I was trying to avoid this chaotic look in the drawing, with the top, I'm less concerned about that. We won't be drawing anything out of these resources particularly. So I will look around and try to find every possible circle that I can, and they will definitely overlap one another. So you can imagine that as I'm wishing for good health for my grandchildren, there are many avenues to good health. Nutrition and genetics and medical care and exercise and all those things and many more things go into making a person healthy. And so obviously more resources than seeds, and that would be true of anything you put down there, really. All right, so I could fill this whole thing with seeds, but I'm gonna call that a day. So then the next step, by now you've figured out, is going to be to round all this. I don't know if you just saw that, but this little space I decided was too small to round it, so I just filled it in. Here's another one that I'm just going to fill in. Here's a couple more. So anytime you have a very tiny space, it's fine to just fill it in instead of rounding it, I think. Those are the only tiny ones that jump out at me. Drawing Neurographica is a drawing form of meditation. Gives you something to think about and focus on, but also in many ways closes out the rest of the world. Gives your brain a chance to make new connections and to rest. We are creatures of pattern, and so with every drawing, whether we're clearing out things we want to clear out or whether we're developing traits we'd like to develop, we are breaking patterns, breaking long established patterns, and that is important for growth, and also something that your brain, your conscious mind, your ego quite naturally rejects in an effort to keep you safe. So you can imagine back in more primitive times, anything that fell out of the ordinary was a potential danger. And so your brain doesn't necessarily differentiate what you're doing now from that. And so if you begin to feel uncomfortable, part of the reason you're feeling uncomfortable is possibly because you are in a state of resistance unconsciously, where your ego is trying to get you to do something it recognizes. So take a deep breath, take a drink of water, think about why you're doing this, and if you're able, keep drawing. And sometimes it's not a bad idea to remind yourself that you're safe, because that's what your brain is reacting to. Your brain is saying we're not safe, or we might not be safe here, and we need to do something different. And so this is where an affirmation, or at least repeating something might be useful to just remind yourself, I'm safe, I'm here right now, this isn't dangerous. And I know that sounds a little bit silly when we're sitting here together, but try it for yourself and see if, when you're facing resistance, if that doesn't help clear the resistance away a little bit and allow you to more comfortably move forward. All right, I've almost got my resources or clouds fully rounded. Just looking for the rest of them. And again, anytime you want to pause the video, feel free, which will give you a chance to catch up to where I am. It does take, I have a lot of practice with this, and it does take quite a while to round when you're when you're new to it. Okay. Good. Now this next piece of the drawing is optional. It kind of depends on what you want to, how representational you want your drawing to be. I tend to think about this drawing as seeds, and seeds need three things to grow, three essential things to grow, and that's dirt and the nutrients in it. It is sunlight, and it's rain. And so far in our drawing, we'll represent rain coming out of these clouds. But so far in our drawing, we have not represented sun, and I like to add sun to my drawing. And I'm going to do it in such a way that when I eventually open my paper up, which I'll show you at the end, my sun will go across both pages. So here's how I'm going to do it. Now, you can leave a sun off if you don't want to do it, that's fine. Or you can do it differently than I did it. Some people like to do their sun in the corner of the drawing before they add clouds. It's a little late for that, sorry. But whatever works for you. And then I do these kind of rays or fireworks, fire symbols coming off of my sunshine to represent that energy going down. Okay, and then I even will round those a little bit. I just like to round this little part in here so it's not so much like a triangle. And not everybody does that when they're drawing this particular design. That's up to you too, but that's what I like to do. All right, so I've got my sun, I've got it rounded into place. I've got my clouds, I've got them rounded into place. Good. Now we're going to add rain coming down, and possibly we'll want to add some lines of the energy of the sun coming down. And so again, as I said, this drawing gets to be a bit chaotic. To avoid some of that chaos and some of the difficulty with figuring out what's what when you're ready to color, I like to begin to grow my seeds at this point, which is before the rain comes down. So I'm going to do two things. I'm going to bring some energy down from the sun through neuro lines, and I'm going to grow my seeds. So those are the two things I want to show you next. So for bringing energy down from the sun, what I'm going to do is draw some neuro lines coming down from these rays. So with a lot of these Neurographica drawings, with the algorithms and the models, there are some optional pieces like this sun, like the rays or energy of the sun, uh, the thicknesses of the lines, what things represent. And it's important, I've found over time, to be comfortable with what you're drawing and feel like it speaks to you. So initially when I made this drawing, when I did this model, I did not include the sun because it didn't seem right to me to have the sun and clouds together. But it just felt strange to say that the rain was doing all the work for the growth of the seeds. The sun being such a significant part of what fuels our universe. So that's why I always include the sun, even though it's a little funny to have both in the sky at the same time. But that's okay, it's my art. Alright, and I'm just rounding these rays into place because that's what we do in Neurographica, is round everything. And okay. Alright, I think I feel like that's good. Okay, now for growing the seeds, what we do is, if you think about seeds, they begin to expand as they're growing first underground. They swell a little bit. So I'm going to kind of swell my seeds around the side, and then I'm going to draw a neurographic budding of my plant going up. So an organic line going up. And I might do that a couple of times. And I might even go through the middle of the plant. And I also, of course, need to add some roots coming out of my seed here. And you know what comes after adding all these lines, I'm sure. You recognize that we're going to be doing some more rounding. Alright, so that was my first one. Now I'm going to go on to my second one. Again, I'm going to swell it a little bit and draw my plant up to this, into the sky. Alright, here we go. And I'm going to go through the seed as well. And I'm going to add some roots coming out of the seed. Okay, now you're beginning to see why I asked you to limit to only 3 seeds as on this first drawing, because there's so many different parts. And I'm now working on my 3rd seed here. So the way this drawing works, as we finish it, once we get it done, later on, if you take my topic as an example, I might say, oh, I want to go ahead and draw something else I've written for my grandchildren, love, for example. and I want to continue this drawing. So the theme remains the same, the topic remains the same, but I just take these lines like my horizon line, and I just keep going, and I would extend every one of these lines, and I can add more lines if I feel like it needs more, and eventually add more seeds and follow out my resources from the top in the same way, finish out my sun, and add more seeds as I go. And then what I can do, once I finish that and I'm happy with that, and I feel that I want to add even more things, I just take my drawing and I take my painter's tape or masking tape or whatever kind of tape you have. I line my paper up, and I tape on another page. Oops, I went too far. There we go. I tape on another page, and I can keep drawing. And this way I can keep growing this drawing, which again is about a topic that is near and dear to my heart, and for which I have many, many wishes. So it's a nice one that whenever I feel like it, I can sit down and add a few more seeds. I can even fold this page over and just do half a page at a time, so that I'm just focusing on half a page as I go. And each time you draw, you could sit down and do the words in 2 minutes exercise again if you wanted, or maybe there are just some things that came to you and you want to add those, and it's good to add anytime. So that's one way to develop this drawing that I wanted to show you. And I'll keep rounding here while I talk. So each of these needs to be rounded into place. All these growth lines need to be rounded into place from our seeds. So I have a good friend who has done this drawing, and she calls it the drawing of Miracle Rain instead of Neuro Rain or Shamanic Rain. And she does seeds for anybody who needs support. So if someone gets a medical diagnosis that's troubling, or has something else going on in their life that is a difficulty, she will, I forgot to put roots on here, she will add them to her drawing, which keeps getting longer and longer, and provide them with some resources. You can label your resources if you want, but you don't have to. It's not important that you know what the resources are. So she keeps drawing for people, and it's a more active way of praying for someone. It's certainly calling on the miracle healing power of the earth and the sky to support someone that you care about, or maybe a bunch of strangers who you've read about in the paper and are struggling. So there are many ways to use this drawing, but I really like to think of it as the miracles and energy already available on the earth, and us harnessing them a little bit, and also getting out of the way, because our ego does that quite a bit, gets in the way of our seeing what's available to us, of our seeing what can make us stronger and what can support us in our growth. So we can do that for ourselves by growing our own traits that we care about, by growing our own health. We can do it for others, strangers, others who are close to us in our lives, and for situations. People did a lot of these kind of drawings around COVID. And around war, hoping that each individual, each entity gets the support they need to be their best version of themselves. So this is a good drawing for that, a good algorithm for that. It's a good one for if you want maybe a promotion at work or some other kind of career development kind of thing, where you focus a little bit on what those resources are that helped you get to where you are and where you want to go. It works really well for that too. Sometimes with a topic like that, it's internally helpful to recognize all the resources that you have. What are the talents that you've already developed? How did you get where you are? Who are the individuals that support you? What are the reasons that this would be a good move for you, both from your own perspective but also from other people's perspective, why they would all support you, why it's good for the company or good for the world or whatever applies. All right, that takes quite a while, all that rounding of those roots and all those lines you put in to show the budding of these seeds. And again, you will miss some as you're rounding, and that's okay. You'll find it as you go forward. You'll find more of the things, and you're never going to round absolutely everything, and that's okay. We're trying to clear out as many obstacles and areas of difficulty as we can, but we can't make our paths entirely smooth, and probably don't want to make our paths entirely smooth. All right, so representationally we have our seeds, and they're growing and they're rooted. We have our clouds with the resources that are feeding our seeds, and our sun is sending energy to our seeds. We are now going to graphically draw the rain from those clouds, and this is one of the only types of drawings that I can think of in Neurographica where we don't round and we draw lines that are actually straight. So this is kind of representational of rain. So what we're going to do, and we're also injecting energy into the drawing. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a pen, and you would either want to use a ballpoint or gel pen or something with a harder nib. This might be a little hard if you're on a marker if you're using it. So we're just going to draw a series of lines, fast and hard, kind of next to each other, to represent rain, coming in multiple directions, but they're straight lines. They might be going at an angle, but they're straight lines beside each other. Now you can begin to see where this, now you can also see where some chaos from this drawing begins to come. So we're drawing that energy. We're drawing rain, but we're symbolically, energetically bringing energy from these resources to the ground. And this is also one of the few kinds of lines that you make in Neurographica that I can think of where we do not round them into place. I think one reason we don't round them into place is they're not neurographic lines. Another reason is we're trying to, with this tension and this straight strength of these lines, we're trying to bring this energy down. We don't want to soften this energy by rounding it. Now, some people will choose to bring that same kind of straight line energy out of the sun down, and that's fine too. I did these neuro lines earlier, so that's I'll leave it at that. But had you not done the neuro lines, or if you want both, that's okay too. It's your drawing. But you could also, do sun rays coming down. But it's representational of that energy of the sky coming down and supporting us here on Earth. So once you have all of these pieces done, you're ready to begin coloring. And I just did this one recently. That I showed you earlier, and I didn't color the individual plants and the individual resources. I colored kind of in streaks down like I typically do on my other neurographic drawings, and I find this more chaotic, more difficult to see the parts, which I like to be able to see the parts. So then I went back in my mind to one more like this, where the resources are very clear visually, and the seeds and growth are very clear visually. And I'm just showing you the difference so that you can think about that as you're drawing. But I found not necessarily that the plants have to be green, but the fact that the plants are a different color from the surrounding soil, just easier to keep it in my mind about where the growth was. So not important in terms of the efficacy of the drawing, but just in terms of showing you what your options might be. So I am going to do that like I did the second drawing there, where I color my resources one color, all one color. The coloring rules for this drawing are the same rules that we always have in Neurographica, and that is that we don't color it like a mosaic. We don't color something green and right next to it red and right next to it blue, where each individual piece is a different color. We instead, all colors have to have at least one other piece next to it that's the same color. So this is green and this is green. This is green and this is green. They're right next to each other, so that works. But you can't have anything that stands alone, including white. The idea of that having to do with, we've created pieces. We've divided this paper or field up quite a bit with our drawing process, and we are now with color mentally joining it, emotionally joining it together, and we want those colors to represent things we've joined together, not things that are still standing separately. And then another piece, and I've shown you this before, but another thing that I often think is a good idea is I've chosen, for example, to do green for my resources there, at least on that part. I take that same green and put it on the back of my paper, and I think about, in this drawing, what does green represent to me? And make a note of that on the back. And that's just part of my journaling process, part of my connecting my subconscious thoughts with my conscious mind, part of what I want to take away from the drawing. So I also recommend that. As I did in that last drawing, I'm going to color my seeds, my growth, each one, just one color. Oh, I wonder if I can do this. I just changed my mind. I don't know if it's too late. Oh, that's red. I'm trying to find pink. Okay, pink. That's too late. I wanted to change this joy to pink. Oh well. Maybe with some red I can do that. There we go. So that's yeah, that's the process. I'm gonna so on this drawing for me, pink represents love and green represents growth. And I'm not sure about yellow. I'm just going to put the yellow on here, but I'm not sure how I'm going to label it yet. Maybe I'm going to turn all of these. I think that's what I'm going to do. I think I'm going to turn all of these pink. All of these are going to be kind of this yellow-red, which I think is going to read as pink. So there's a whole course in Neurographica on what colors mean. And that's available for you to take once you've taken the basic user course. And part of the course is learning some different meanings for colors in various cultures, various practices, and part of it is figuring out what colors mean to you. At this stage in your drawing, if you're still early, I suggest you just pick what colors you enjoy and what give you pleasure, but it is never too soon to start thinking about, I wonder why I picked pink. Why did I want that to be pink? That can be a useful exercise for you. I almost always make my suns purple. And purple almost always represents to me intuition, divine knowledge, divine intervention, those kind of things. So I guess I sort of think of the sun as almost like a resource up here itself. But there's no reason that needs to be that way to you. There's no reason it needs to mean that or mean anything to you. In particular, you get to choose, and it doesn't have to be the same from drawing to drawing. I'm gonna do, I almost never used gray until I took the color course in Neurographica and learned that gray represents metal, which represents kind of a solidity, focus of purpose, something very solid. So I often add gray in a drawing when I do it as a source of strength and stability. So certainly stability is something I wish for my grandchildren. And then brown for me represents the earth and represents being grounded in the earth. So in this particular drawing, I often add brown. Oops. See, find things that aren't rounded when you start coloring. Everybody does that. So I hope you're seeing some ways that this particular model or algorithm could be useful to you in areas of your life you want to develop or grow, or in offering support to others in the world. Most the early algorithms you would learn in the basic user course, which I'll be offering soon, tend to be about removing things from yourself that create blocks. So often that's things from your past, or fights you often have, disagreements with people, frustrations in yourself. So there's a lot of kind of clearing yourself in the early days with Neurographica. And then once you've done that, we move on to drawings where you are directing your future in some direction, you're applying an intention. So this would obviously qualify that as that. All right, if you have not finished your coloring portion of your drawing, you can certainly pause before you do the next step. The next step in any Neurographica drawing then is to add the universal lines. The universal lines represent, depending on your own belief system, they represent the energy of the universe, they represent God, they represent the support that we all have moving forward. They represent something we can harness. They represent something that supports us when we can't support ourselves. And again, it means what it means to you, and that's fine. Depending on the algorithm you're drawing, they can be done differently. In this particular drawing, because everything we're doing is bringing energy from the top down, I would suggest that your universal lines come from the top and go down, and where possible, you catch one or more of your seeds in the lines to give them support. And a drawing this size would typically have a couple of universal lines. You could choose to do 3 lines, one for each seed, and then you would, if you expanded your drawing, you would add more universal lines in each of these panels as you kept going. So I'm going to start at the top, and these lines can be original lines that haven't been drawn yet, or they can be following lines that already exist. That is up to you how you feel intuitively. These are organic lines. So with some give, and they do go from all the way from the top to the bottom, and they do stand out. They are thicker than your other neuro lines. It should be clear to someone looking at your picture which are your universal lines. If you don't have a thicker marker, I'm using a thicker marker here. If you don't have a thicker marker, I would recommend you can just take your medium point and just, make several lines right next to each other. That works too. And I am going to go ahead and do one universal line for each of these seeds. Okay, and of course we have to ram these lines into place with universal lines. I want to encourage you to make them look like they're part of the drawing, not sitting on top. And so in order to do that, when we round them in, we round them, we do nice juicy big roundings. So if this were a road on a map and these were exits, the exits off of this big thick road would have to be bigger than the exits from the smaller lines. Or if this were an artery with veins coming off of it, these thicker arteries would have to have bigger veins coming off of them. Maybe veins don't come off of arteries. Don't quote me on medical information. But in any case, you see what I'm saying, that if these were pipes, there we go. These were pipes, you would have to have a decent sized pipe to catch the energy coming off of that line. So you want to round those nicely. Your roundings can't be too big. Too big doesn't exist. They can be too small. So if you're looking at it and wonder if it should be rounded more, then the answer is yes. If you don't wonder, then you're okay. Then you're probably okay. Remember that these roundings represent the easy, gentle flow of energy with no resistance, no fight. And so that is most of the time our preference. Whenever possible, we want life to move somewhat easily. Or most of us do most of the time. I think of the roundings as representing a gentler soul, a gentler approach. Think about the way people drive, people who let you go first and who put on their brakes gently and move through the world gently, versus people who honk and are impatient and tell people to get over, get out of the way. There's a contentment that comes with it, I think. All right, I think I rounded those into place. Do a couple more things here, but I will say once again, please feel free to pause the video at any point that you need to catch up. It's not a race. Unless you're trying to make a video that isn't too long so people will watch it. And then it's a little bit of a race. All right. All right, I think those are sufficiently rounded into place. I'm somebody who could sit here for another 20 minutes and keep rounding the same lines over and over. I guess I would like things to be very smooth in my life. But I will show you almost the last step. So now we look at our drawing and we want to do what is sometimes called the solution circle, sometimes called the affixing, which is the way we look at this drawing. We've done a lot of work with our subconscious as we've been doing this drawing. And we want to ideally walk away from this drawing with some knowledge. Some of that knowledge won't fully come to your conscious mind until you sleep on it. But we want to give our conscious mind something to kind of hang its hat on, something to make it easy to remember. This is a lot of information. And so we do that by picking one or two areas on the drawing that we want to highlight as the image that we affix in our brain, the shortcut to the information we received in this drawing. This is an intuitive process. It would be very common for people to highlight one or more of the seeds. And you could pick something entirely different. It's really a personal choice. For me, I am going to do my sun, which I often do in this drawing because for me it represents life. And so I'm taking that semicircle I made before and just stretching it out. I'm making the line wider, which you also want to do with your solution circle. I realize it's not an actual circle, it's an arc. When I expand the drawing, I will expand the arc. But in your mind, an arc is a circle. Your brain finishes the circle for you. It's just a little gift from your brain. It doesn't need to see the full circle. If you've ever seen those puzzles where they have you try to read something where a lot of the letters have been left out. I think they often leave out the vowels, or maybe, I don't know what it is, or maybe it's the put in the consonant, the first letter, and leave out other letters. Anyway, whatever it is, it's interesting that it's fairly easy to read it even though it doesn't have all the letters, and the meaning is still pretty clear. So our brain does a lot of tricks to fill in gaps. Our brain is a pattern maker, and it's always looking for patterns. So it sees this arc right here, and it says that's a circle. I can only see part of it, but it's a circle. And I don't need to finish it. But I do need to round it in place, and it does need to be bigger, excuse me, thicker. The line needs to be thicker than the other lines. Again, it should be very obvious to someone looking at your drawing that this is your solution circle or your affixing. It shouldn't be a guess. And then you could call it done at this point. I do one additional thing sometimes on some of my drawings that I will go ahead and show you. And that is that I then take my affixing or my solution circle and I color over all of it with one color. And I'm going to do that with this drawing with my purple. I'm going to turn my whole solution circle purple. And this does a couple of things. First of all, for me, purple means the divine and a higher purpose and me not being in control and a lot of things like that. And so I have now said to myself, at least in part, that part of the message of this drawing is that I'm not in control of this outcome. And that's certainly true. And so that's one piece of coloring it one color, is you're saying that's kind of the message from here. Another piece is that further makes that part of the drawing, the solution circle, stand out. So when a person looks at this drawing, they're going to see that first, especially if I messed around with it for a long time and shaded it and did all that. So one of the things that, one of the steps is stylizing in a drawing, and I would suggest, should you choose to do, and that just means making the drawing, doing whatever you want to make it your own drawing, making it prettier, making yourself more satisfied with it. And that's usually one of the very last things that you do. I tend to color fairly lightly as I'm doing this piece, and then if I want to stylize it later, it's possible for me to do a lot of shading and stuff. So that's what I would do later off camera if I chose to do it. So for me, the very last step then, and sometimes this will be today, right now, and sometimes this would be tomorrow, you know, after I've had a chance to sleep on it. And that's to sit with the drawing, sit with what I did, and journal about it a little bit. And so I, on the back of my paper, I might do the words in 2 minutes exercise again, see how the words had shifted. That's informative. I might expound more on my color choices. I might just talk about why I turned the sun purple. So whatever has occurred to me, whatever insights I've gained through the drawing process, I will note them on the back of the paper. That's my process. And I recommend you doing something to wrap up the process of the drawing and to, you know, bookend it. And again, that can often, for some people, works better the next day when they've had a chance to sleep on it. Another very common thing to do, and I recommend, is to take your current drawing, so this one in this case, and put it somewhere where you're going to see it several times today, tomorrow, just to kind of get your mind refreshed a little bit and keep yourself focused on it for a day or two until you've moved on to a new drawing or a new topic. That's what I have for you today. So thank you very much. I appreciate anybody who's made it this far, taking the time to come all the way to the end of the video. And if you'd like to join us for classes, check out the website, or Drawing Circle is continuing for free every Saturday through the end of May. This is, yeah, through the end of May. So I hope to see some of you there. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.